Hello, Algebra 1. So we are going to continue on with our first section, so chapter 1. It's a pretty quick section, so almost halfway done with it. So we are going to start by talking about our substitution property. So the substitution property, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, but what the substitution property says in written terms is if, let's get a color here. Okay. So if A is equal to B, then A may be replaced for B in any expression. So essentially, like, what the substitution property is saying is it's saying, like, okay, let's put it in layman's terms. You guys are familiar with substitute teachers. So a substitute teacher comes in and tries to replace a teacher when they are not there. And so oftentimes in math, we will say x equals 4. So wherever there's an x, we replace that x with a 4. And that's what the substitution property is primarily used for in math. So to evaluate an expression using substitution, we substitute the variable with their given values. So substitute the variables with their given values. Each time you substitute a variable with a number, put parentheses around the number. This is super important, especially when we're dealing with exponents. Parentheses around the number. And then, of course, follow the order of operations to evaluate. Okay, so let's do some examples. So first one says evaluate each expression using the substitution property. So we have a b squared plus c when a equals 2, b equals 4, and c equals 7. So first thing, when we have those like a and b squared right next to each other, right now, hopefully you're thinking, I know what that means when two variables are right next to each other. That means that they are multiplying. So remember, if they're right next to each other and there's no operation in between, there's always this like imaginary multiplication symbol in between that you can always remember to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute. So first thing, let's go. Okay, so we know A is equal to 2. So in my expression here, I'm going to take A, and instead of writing A, I'm going to write 2. I'm going to write it in parentheses. Okay, and then we know B is equal to 4. So we're going to right here put in 4 for B. But that squared, that's a number. It's not a variable, so it stays the same. The plus stays the same. And then C. So we know C is equal to 7. So we're going to replace the C with 7. If I can find my purple. There you go. Okay. So then we just follow order of operations, which we talked about yesterday. So remember, order of operations is GEMDOS. So grouping symbols, I can't simplify anything in my grouping symbols. So I move on to the next one, exponents. So exponents, that's the first thing I'm going to tackle here. If you were to multiply first and then apply your exponents, you would get the wrong answer. So you have to be careful. You have to take your time and remember to follow your order of operations. So we're going to do our exponents first. 4 squared. So 4 squared, that's 4 times 4, that's 16. Okay, so I first just dealt with my exponents. Okay, so I did exponents. Now I'm going to multiply and divide from left to right. So 2 times 16, that's my first multiplying. 2 times 16 we know is 32. And then I'm just going to bring everything else down. So now I've done all the multiplication and division. Now I just add and subtract. So 32 plus 7 gets me 39. And that is my final answer. And remember, if at any time when we're going through this, you guys have questions, you guys can always like write them down, put it on a Post-it, write it on the side of your notes somewhere, and bring it to class the next day so we can make sure that you feel comfortable and good about those notes. Okay, so we have our next one. So we have 3x squared minus, looks like a super weird minus, so I'm just going to write it in, minus 4x when x equals -2. So what I want you guys to start by doing is just plugging in your x. So use the substitution property to plug in -2 wherever there's an x. So just try that on your own, plugging in that -2. Okay, so you should be coming back. You should have already plugged in your -2. So again, we're taking this -2, and wherever there's an x here, there's an x here, we're going to plug in -2. So we're going to keep the 3 the same. My -2 is going to go in parentheses. We're going to square that, minus 4, and then again, -2 in parentheses. Okay, so now that we've substituted it in, now we're going to, again, follow our order of operations. So we're looking at our grouping symbols. Now there's nothing inside the grouping symbols that I can simplify further. I can't simplify -2 any further. I can't simplify those actual, like it would be if you had like addition inside the parentheses, which we don't. So then I'd move on to exponents. So we see our exponent. We have -2 squared. Be careful with that one. That one is, remember, it's in parentheses. So -2 squared, -2 times -2 is +4. So we're going to bring that down. Okay, so then I've done my exponents. I'm going to multiply and divide from left to right. So I'm going to start here. 3 times 4. 3 times 4 is 12. And if you want to do this in the next step without copying everything down again, you can. So I'm just going to copy everything down so I can show you kind of step by step. But if you don't need to do that, that's totally fine. And then we go multiply here. They're right next to each other again, or one's in parentheses, one's not. So that's another indicator that we're multiplying there. So I'm going to ignore this minus for right now and just do 4 times -2. 4 times -2 is -8. So it's a minus and a minus. Now, we haven't really talked much about adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. But remember, when you're subtracting a negative, I think there's the positive peanut, which I don't really know. Or there's I don't know all the things that you guys have been taught before with the negatives and the negatives, but all I know is that when you're subtracting a negative number, they become positive. So 12 minus a -8 is the same as 12 plus 8. And we know 12 plus 8 is 20. Now, if you're uncomfortable with that, that's okay. You guys can use your calculator to help you with those problems. So if you're using your calculator, I'm going to show you on a different calculator just so you can see it maybe, hopefully. Turn down the settings. Okay, so if you were to go into your calculator and do 12 minus, and that's when we're using the actual minus button, minus a negative, and that's when we're using the negative button, -8, you would get 20. So if you're not comfortable with like a minus and a minus make a positive and doing that in your head, that's fine. Use your calculator. You have those, use them to your advantage. Okie dokie. So let's move on to 3. We have x squared plus 2x plus 16 divided by y squared. So what I want you guys to start by doing is just plugging everything in and making sure that you are feeling comfortable and confident with using the substitution property. So try that process on your own, come back, check your work. Okay, you should be checking your work now, and you should have substituted in the 3 wherever there's an X, which there's an X in 2 places, and the 4 wherever there's a Y, which there is a Y in 1 place. So your substituted expression should be 3 squared plus 2. Notice how nothing that we're not coloring because we're not substituting it isn't changing. So the squared didn't change, the 2 didn't change. The plus 16 isn't going to change. And then divided by y squared, so 4 squared. Okay. So if you guys are feeling comfortable, you're feeling good with this, you already did the substitution process, then I want you guys to try it on your own. I want you guys to try and simplifying this expression on your own. So go ahead and pause me here and then try that and then come back and make sure you did it correctly. Okay, so you should be done and checking. So I would start by doing my exponents. There's no grouping symbols, so I'm going to do my exponents. I'm actually just going to do that in one step here. So 3 squared we know is 9. 9 plus 2 times 3 plus 16 divided by 4 squared, which is also 16. Then I'm going to multiply and divide from left to right. So I'm going to do those in 2 steps. I'm going to go first multiplication I see, 2 times 3 is 6. And then I keep looking because I have more division here, and then I'm going to divide here. So 16 divided by 16, well, anything divided by itself is 1. And then I just can add those together. 9 plus 6 is 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. And that's my final answer. Okay, so again, remember, if you guys have any questions throughout this, please make sure you guys are writing them down, jotting those notes down, and then you come back and ask me questions. Okay, let's try 4. So 4 says y squared minus 3xy when x equals -4, y equals -2. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to first just substitute your values in. So try to substitute those values in on your own. Okay, so you should be coming back and hopefully checking your work because I substituted my values in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you guys simplify it. So simplifying, remember, use order of operations, PEMDAS or GEMDAS. So grouping symbols, no grouping symbols. Exponents, that's my 2 squared. So 2 squared is 4. Minus 3 times -4 times 2. Now, this is a one big multiplication problem. So some of you guys can do that in your head. Some of you guys need a calculator. Let's do that in a calculator. So I'm just going to deal with this right here. So I'm going to ignore the negative right now for now. And then in my calculator, I'm just going to do 3 times -4 times 2. And that gets me -24. So we have 4 minus a -24. Now, what do we know about minus a negative? When we're subtracting a negative, just like we did up on 2, a minus and a minus makes a positive. So 4 plus 24, that ends up to be 28. And that's my final answer. And that is it for the notes, guys. If you guys have any questions, please bring them to class, and then we'll go over them. We will practice these in class. So there you have it. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you soon.